And welcome back to Mr. Constitution. We are today, I think we're continuing on with sections 9 and 10 of the Constitution. If you want to jump ahead, it's about 15 minutes till the hour, top of the hour. So if you want to jump ahead to about the 15-minute mark of the video, that's when we're going to start with the class. But first 15 minutes just going to be chit-chatting away as people migrate their way in.
Yeah, and Mr. Gibbs is probably going to be early today.
Nice.
Eye patch Partain. How's the eye doing?
Going okay. I had my follow up this morning,
Yeah.
and so the gas bubble is 70% there, so 30% dissipated, and now I just have to wait. Basically, just have to wait. It is a waiting game.
How's it really messing with your depth perception?
Oh, absolutely.
Bumping into walls?
I don't really I don't bump into walls, but I do. Today I drove myself to the doctor, and it was. I mean, it wasn't horrible, but it does kind of mess with me a little bit.
Yeah, I would imagine. I don't know that I've ever had to wear an eye patch. At least it looks better on you than Dan Crenshaw.
That's why it's eye patch Partain.
I figured that. I was going to say eye patch McCain, but that guy is a piece of work.
Yeah, he is a douche bag.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Chris. Hey, Steph. It's funny how some of these really red states give you some of the worst senators and congressmen. I'm looking at you, South Carolina, Texas, South Dakota. Yeah, you would expect we do better in those.
So what's going on with the thing with the Dominion?
Oh, Fox settled for about $780 million.
I understand, but why? Why would they settle?
Because they didn't want to go to court, and now Fox has an excuse to not have to cover election fraud. Oops, am I supposed to say that?
Yeah, because I would think that that's actually it's really more for keeping the charade going.
Yes. I mean, we got no testimony. A lot of stuff could have come out.
So
our legal system is a bit of a joke sometimes. There's some other election integrity stuff going on. Doug needs a link. I'll send it to him. Yeah, I got it.
All right.
The fun bit of news today was looks like Jamie Dimon, CEO of JP Morgan, is going to have to give about 2 days of testimony in the Jeffrey Epstein lawsuits that are coming out. One of them's coming out of U.S. Virgin Islands, and they have standing to sue, and they're going after banks. So JP Morgan's on the hook. There's a company and a couple of other big banks.
I saw a very interesting article the other day where it was like I'll be honest with you, I didn't read it. I just saw the title, and it was it said something about, is Jamie Dimon like secretly a good guy? Is he like is he playing on the good guy side? Or kind of like maybe if he's been like forced into doing it or something like that. And I'm very skeptical of that, but
well, the predatory stuff he pulled in 2009 should pretty much end that conversation really quickly.
I get that.
He's probably the most powerful figure on Wall Street right now.
Easily.
Well, the Goldman guys occasionally have a little bit of pull, but I think Jamie's been at the helm for so long. And I think his relationships with the Treasury Department are so strong that it gives him a little extra weight. They most certainly did get bailed out in 2009, though.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Doug.
Hello.
Mr. Constitution.
Gonna refrain myself from the pirate jokes.
Ha ha ha. Not like I haven't heard any of them in the last 2 weeks. If there's a vision joke or a sea joke, I've heard it.
Hey, Glory Hole Ron Partain.
Heard that one too.
Of course you did.
You're going to have to come up with something a whole lot more original.
Well, see, the problem is we've been making those jokes about iPatch McCain for so long that everyone knows all the material. We've used them all up.
So, but everybody was like, "Oh, hey, Ron didn't see that one coming." Last night somebody said, "Aye, aye."
Oh God, I should have gone and looked some up for you. So Doug,
Ron was the only place where there was an eye that couldn't see.
Ron opens up our class. Ron opens up our class today. He goes, "Hi, we're going to do section 9 and 10 of the Constitution."
That's what was in the
Article 1, Section 9, Article 1, Section 10. But that's okay. I didn't feel it was merited. I'm just happy to have you here. So many times on shows the last few weeks, I've ended up opening solo with an unprepared monologue, and it's not the easiest thing in the world. So it's nice to have company on the open.
I haven't been obviously. I had eye surgery, and last week we didn't even have class. Hello, Jennifer. Jennifer, did I send something? Did you get something from me? A package?
Well, since we're on a delay, we'll keep talking because it'll take her 15 seconds to answer.
Yeah.
That's about what the delay is on YouTube. Ron, you have any trouble uploading anything to Rumble the last couple days?
Well, I'm not really uploading much to Rumble these days because I am mostly doing live stuff now. Okay, thanks, Jen.
I have Brady.
Yep. I've got my tech guys checking into it. He says it's pretty much systemic. A lot of people are reporting problems.
Yeah, I tried to upload something last night, and it still says it's at 33%. And I just now tried to upload something.
Yeah, that's the exact same problem I had. The 33% waiting for someone to take up.
Very nice. In your studio, Jennifer, do you have a heat press machine? Jennifer makes bathing suits. She makes a whole bunch of stuff. She's very creative. She has a little studio, and she's in Norco.
Cool, very cool. And someone said Doug is freezing up a little bit. Doug, have you you on a good computer?
Yeah, he's frozen right now.
Interesting.
He's not that stoic.
No, that's my job. We were on a show last week, and sometime in the last week or so, someone said my first language is sarcasm. Maybe it was this show last week, which is somewhat true. Well, Doug, I saw you blink.
I'm turning everything off to make sure this doesn't pose a problem. I've been having this problem for the last few weeks, and I think it's just that
you probably have software and stuff installed.
Well, whenever you're ready, I've got the Constitution ready to launch up.
Well, let's give it about 5 minutes because we won't start until 3:00.
Good point.
Well, Ron, since you're kind of a computer guy, maybe I should bring it to you so you can keep an eye on it.
Yeah, bring it over tomorrow. Are you coming up to Beaumont?
Thursday, I come up to Beaumont, and I was joking about keeping an eye on it, but anyway.
Ha 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 ha.
But no, seriously, because I'm wondering if maybe there's things running that shouldn't be running. I don't see them, but I've been having this problem last couple of weeks where there's a delay. Like when there it froze again. I can see it, and there's like a delay. I raise my hand, and then it's like 5 seconds before my hand goes up on my video.
We're demoing a new, different software to replace StreamYard.
Brought in the big gun today, by the way, for Dr. Pepper.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah. So, anyways, we're demoing an alternative video platform, and it looks pretty good so far. It should be a lot smoother than StreamYard, and it's got some other, little bit better studio controls. I'll have to show it to you guys.
What is it?
I should remember that. Let me see if I can look it up while we're talking. Is this one EV Mux? Might be EV Mux, MUX.
No.
I got all kinds of software demos on the screen right now. The other thing I've found is I'm doing all my streaming and broadcasting on Brave browser as opposed to Safari or Windows or Chrome or anything like that, and it is a huge improvement. So Brave may solve that a little bit too, Doug. Do you have Brave browser installed?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I switched to that about a month ago, and I've noticed a big improvement. Hey, we got a Raging Smirk sighting. What's up, buddy? So I was all bummed. We did the 2-hour show Sunday night, and I had Gordon, who was one of my co-hosts, and another guy, Michael Corey. And he's a very, very deep researcher, and he's done a lot of the stuff about the, he's one that helped write the Erickson report. Anyways, it's a really good 2-hour conversation. And I was trying to get it out on Rumble the last 2 days, and it's just not happening. So I had to put it up on Odyssey, and that's how I distributed it on my social media.
Right. Yeah, I got into about 15 minutes of it so far while I was driving back from Fallbrook this morning.
Oh, cool. Cool. I am flattered.
Yeah, so I'll probably finish watching it on my way to Capistan, or at least, well, not finish watching it, but get another 40 minutes of it or something like that in.
Yeah, well, we got enough requests that we're going to probably do some follow-up shows because we're topics we didn't hit. We'll see how that goes.
So Raging Smirk is going to be a featured speaker. Get on stage and rage.
Nice. That'd be cool. Hey, record that and get it to me, would you? I've never seen a Raging Smirk.
It's kind of like a Raging Smurf, but it's not blue. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
You just reminded me of it. What is it? Not the Muppets or whatever. That whole genre. They've got trannies on the show every day now. They're just shoving it in our faces. Some guy with a beard and mustache who wears a dress is on the show. Apparently, he's good friends with Dylan Mulvaney.
I'm very happy to see Bud Light losing a tremendous amount of market share.
Yeah, they're not going to come back from it. The question is, will the parent company, Anheuser-Busch,
really
get hit?
I hear a lot of people are. It's not just Bud Light they're going to go after. They're going to go after across the board anybody anything that Anheuser-Busch owns. They're going to
the list been making those lists are all over the internet of what not to buy.
Mm-hmm.
Where it gets interesting is, I used to work in the restaurant business, and what you want to do is you want to have, your main brands, whether it be Bud or Bud Light, you want to be on the main taps. And to do that, you give discounts among some of your other beers and stuff like that. But if you lose that main tap, you lose a lot of shelf space in restaurants. And this is going to hurt them. We won't know how much monetary damage till the next quarterly earnings, and maybe even not till the quarter after that. But the small sell-off in the stock is it could be it could continue to go that direction. That's a huge company, but they just talk about not knowing your audience.
Mackinac Island, late September. Late September is a good time to go out there. Stephanie is asking me because she and I have been talking about getting me out there to Michigan. Now I am going to be in, looks like Washington, D.C. and Chattanooga, Tennessee in July. And perhaps Arkansas at one point too. We'll see that during that same trip.
Well, let's talk about that, because we are going to be in Nashville on July 15th for Freedom Fest. So is that something we want to try to coordinate?
Well, the plan is that I'm going to be on my way to Washington, D.C. on the 1st, and I'll be back on the 9th, but I may be required to testify in a 6-day of the first month trial that begins on July 6th. And I've been asked by the defense to be on the stand. And it starts at 6, and they're figuring they may need me by about the 10th or 11th. So I may have to turn around and go right back out to Washington, D.C. The 4th of July one is an event, but the second trip is if I'm needed. Depends on how the other cases going right now regarding certain boys that are really proud to be who they are.
Yeah.
And if that thing crashes and burns really fast, and they want to save me for their appeal. But if it looks like recent footage has been released by certain people who ran with Trucker is affecting things in a good way, then I'll be there for the first round. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, one of the
Chris L says, saw that earlier in my email. Yeah, or in vid. I put out a video. I'm doing I'm going to do a series of 3 or 4 videos about this. Basically, it's a friend of mine who was on the premises that we're talking about on the 6th day of the first month, but he was on the opposite side of the building that everything happened. He showed up at 2:45 after everything happened. And when he got there, they heard that someone had been shot, particular young lady who got shot and killed at that event. And at the moment they heard about that, the 4 men huddled up into a circle, put their arms around each other, went into prayer. So, and that was pretty much the length of their presence there. They stayed on the grass. They never went on any steps, never went into any lobbies or chambers. And so basically this is a prayer trial, in my opinion. They are faced with a possibility between 4 and 26 years of time in the federal pen, if convicted, for praying on the grass on the opposite side of the building of where something happened after it all happened. So think about it. But anyway, so
we live in
foreign land. Remember,
we live in a sick and twisted, upside down world, and I watched a very interesting interview with Harvey Schlinger, Harley or Harvey. Anyway, and he was talking about the death of the dollar and how that was actually a good thing for Americans, and I agree.
Well, it all depends on what replaces it. All depends, and the question is, what do you do with all the dollar-denominated debt? Because every financial institution in the world holds some of that debt.
I get that, but by having the dollar is essentially what is being enforced by, call it hegemony, all over the world.
I call it the U.S. military.
Yeah, exactly. It's bringing. It's like I remember a bumper sticker: "Be nice to America, or we'll bring democracy to your country."
Yeah, I'm more than happy to give up the. Basically, we've talked about 20 years that the dollar being a sole reserve currency is worth about 20 to 25% of purchasing power to us here, and I'm willing to give that up for the freedom it would bring. But economically, it's going to be a challenge. But we can get past that. You start, people start being aware of exactly how bad this whole Federal Reserve System has been, and all the crimes that have been committed in our name on its behalf. We might just get an opportunity to get rid of a lot of government waste and spending, and watch the U.S. economy take off. Then,
absolutely. So. When you remove the shackles of the people and allow ingenuity to flourish, remove the regulatory state, which isn't necessarily about protecting people. It's all about protecting monopolization. People on the left are 100% correct when they rail against the corporations. What they fail to comprehend is that by advocating for government intervention, what they're generally doing is advocating for a monopolization of the very thing they hate.
Yeah, and you'll see the same thing on the right. They say everything's wrong with the government. They want to protect the corporations when it's actually both of them working together. That's the problem.
Right. Mm-hmm. All right, let's go. Let's get it started.
Well, I just waiting patiently. I knew eventually you guys would run out of gas.
No, we can go on for a while. It's been a while since Ryan and I chatted.
Yeah, this is true. Well, where we left off, folks, if we want to get back into the Constitution, is Article 1, Section 9. And it's good to see you guys. Pleasure's all mine. I'm glad we're here. I'm glad we're having this opportunity to spend the time together. How many of you guys are shocked I was here early? I was kind of joking on the phone with somebody earlier saying, "Oh, stop." Because what happens is I have a Constitution class in Fallbrook prior to this. And like all of my Constitution classes, everybody has a million questions. And rather than stand there in the parking lot, since I haven't eaten yet, I say, well, let's go to lunch. And then I go to lunch and then, to answer questions and all that. And basically, it's an extension of the Constitution class. But I have to be out of there basically by 2. And that's if the traffic's being nice to me. And sometimes traffic's not so nice. Sometimes I get out there a little bit later or whatever. And so it's always a challenge to make sure I get here by 3, but I can do it. And then I have to get on the road by like 4:05 or 4:10 to get out to Capistrano. So this is the window I have on Tuesdays. This is why we do this at 3:00 Pacific. Today, rather than I told my audience, we finished the Constitution in that particular class tonight. I'm not going to have lunch. I've got a meeting, and I did. And I met with someone who I work with on some stuff that I do. And then after that meeting was over, I got down here. I went to the credit union. I got home, and I still had like 40 minutes before this started. So, yeah, it doesn't always happen that way. But every once in a while, I get those interesting little opportunities to get here way early. So, allows for things like, getting an extra big Dr. Pepper and stuff like that. So anyway, it's good to see you. Now, when we talk about Article 1, what's a reminder? Article 1 is the legislative branch. Article 2, executive branch. Article 3 is the judicial branch. You have 3 branches of government. And it really kind of mirrors the God's triune, right? God the Father would, if it was in our system, it would be the executive. The Christ is our judge and supreme judge, and the Holy Spirit, writes the law, and that would be the legislative. So there's kind of a correlation there. So Article 1, we're talking about Article 1, and then anytime we talk about anything in Article 1, what that means is it's legislative in nature. It's about the legislative branch because it's in Article 1. So what we're talking about here in Article 1, Section 9 and Article 1, Section 10, which we're about halfway through 9, are prohibitions that have been put on the legislative branch with these 2 sections. And this is important because when it comes to Article 1, Section 9, the states have gotten together and said, okay, we're writing this Constitution and we're giving authorities, and that's the way it works. However, there's some things that are so egregious and so important that the federal government does not do this. We need to make a list of them. And so that's what we're going through. There's a second list that's similar called the Bill of Rights, but that has to do with our rights. This is just procedural. These are procedures. These are actions. These are powers that the federal government is not supposed to be involved in. Then in Article 1, Section 10, they do something even more interesting. They do the same thing with the states. Excuse me. Here's a list of things we don't want the states to do. All 3 paragraphs in that section begins with the words, no state shall. Well, now, the interesting part about this, remember, these delegates are from the states. The states are writing this. So they're saying, okay, we're creating this contract. We're the parties of this contract, this agreement called the Constitution, this compact. And we want to make sure that the entity we're creating, the federal government, not only understands that it is only allowed the powers that we've given it, but there are some things that we just don't want happening because it's tyrannical. We experienced this stuff with Britain. We've seen this in history. through our research. And then on top of that, to make sure everything functions properly, we are also going to have a list for the states not to do, because we don't want us to do things that may not be good for the union. I just wanted you to think about that dynamic, and it's an interesting one to be sure. And also, I want you to, when you think about this stuff, put yourself in the 1787 mindset. Don't think with a 2023 mind, because we have something they didn't have: hindsight. And this was a new thing for them. This is an experiment. And we know that there was some things that didn't go exactly the way they wanted. They made some adjustments, 11th Amendment, 12th Amendment being a couple of them. So they don't have, while they did look back in history, these guys were brilliant. I think the Constitution was a wonderful document. We have to remember they didn't have the same hindsight we have. So sometimes when you ask questions, this is for you, audience, you say, well, Doug, well, what about this? Or why didn't they stop this? Or what, well, it's not that they didn't see things coming, but because a lot of things they did, but they tried to fashion this in the way that was best in their time. But see, they understood that there might need to be a few tweaks. That's why there's an amendment process. And they didn't trust Congress to do those tweaks all the time. That's why the states can do it through a Article 5 convention. So they made room for movement. So now, the other thing that I wanted to mention before we get reading is this. Declaration of Independence said something very interesting, and everybody knows it. These are iconic words. All men are created equal. You hear that, like we the people at the beginning of the Constitution, all men are created equal in the Declaration of Independence. That's a uniquely American thing. When you say that anywhere in the world, someone's going to say, America. They may not know it was the Declaration of Independence, but they know it's an American thing. This is an American ideal. But when Jefferson wrote all men are created equal, obviously as individuals, as time passes, because of our skill set and our luck and our decisions, the equality stops there. We're all going to take different paths. But we're created equal, and that equality means that please don't laugh when I say this, Ron, there's no nobility. There's no preferential treatment supposed to happen. There's nobody that's above anybody else or above the law. That's what it meant. But it meant it from a point of view of God and the law. And so uniformity and equality in the treatment under the law was important. So this next part that we're going to read in Article 1, Section 9 addresses that, not only equality among the people created equal, but the states. The states are now part of a union. They are no longer, while they are sovereign, while they are autonomous, when it comes to things that pertain to the preservation, the promotion, and the protection of the union, their biggest purpose is to do what's best for the union. When it comes to their internal improvement and their internal improvement and internal affairs and all that jazz, then they do what's best for them. But when it comes to the union, there's going to be a certain uniformity. These states are supposed to protect, promote, and preserve the union. So that said, last week we kind of finished off with the capitation and taxes and all that. So we are 6 paragraphs into Article 1, Section 9. And here's what it says. No preference shall be given by any regulation of commerce or revenue to the ports of one state over those of another. Federal government can't say, well, we really want most of the goods and the best price to come in through Boston Harbor or New York Harbor or Baltimore. No, the states are members of a union. This is for the country, and the ports are what are there when it comes to trade, when it comes to trade to foreign countries, export, import. They are there for the purpose of the union. And therefore, there is no competition between the states. This is not about the states competing against each other. This is foreign commerce. So we want no preferential treatment between the ports by the federal government. So the taxes, the laws, the regulations, how they operate, all of that is going to be for lack of a better way of putting it, equal. No preference. No preference shall be given it by any regulation of commerce or revenue to the ports of one state over those of another, nor shall vessels bound to or from one state be obliged to enter, clear, and pay duties in another. What that says is, see, you got to remember, before the Constitution, the states were their own little countries. As far as they were concerned, their biggest threat was each other. And they had protectionist laws in place. And they were hammering each other with tariffs and so on and so forth. And this section saying, nah, you guys are a part of a union. So you don't charge a vessel from one state to another to enter in the port. You'll do that with foreign vessels. If you've got a fee and an inspection law and the duties that go along with that, fine. But when it comes to the others between the states, the federal government nor the states, but in this case, federal government, there is no duties between the states. They're a part of the country. So there's not going to be any special duties or other type of tax or fee, federal or otherwise, because vessels are entering a port from a port of another state, or it's from another state. We're all one country. Now, this next part may perk a few ears up, because it has to do with money and how the federal government spends this money, acquires this money, and all that jazz. So a few ears may perk up, maybe an eye patch. So it says, I can't help myself, man. See, if I didn't like you, I wouldn't screw with you. I'd just ignore you.
Oh, so, I know. Trust
it's
me.
Just a show of love, man. It's just a show of love.
Listen. I have been brutalized for the last 3 weeks for an hour and a half each time on Glitch. Okay. So yeah, I assure you, there's nothing that can be said.
Yeah, there's no way the guys in the Glitch were not going to give you hell. I mean, that's just that is,
and not just the guys, but the audience too. So I mean, everybody was getting in on the act.
So you did everything you could to keep an eye on them. Couldn't keep 2 eyes on them, but you kept an eye on them. I got you. Okay. So
right, yeah.
I love you, man. I appreciate you. I love you. All right. You ever heard of One-Eyed Willie? Okay. Anyway. All right.
We got a Goonies reference too.
Hey, man, Goonies is like one of the greatest movies of all time. Come on, man. All right. So
yeah, you remind me of whatever the guy. What was the guy's name? Hey, you guys.
Hey, you guys.
It was like it's like Schlepp or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh man.
That's who Doug reminds me of.
Yeah, all right. One good turn deserves another, I
guess. How's that tooth working for you?
Yeah, well, it's like I tell people, I'm trying to not be that guy that gets accused of lying through his tooth. I got a whole bunch of people in Arkansas, their family that, have been accused of that. You go, of course, the great thing about Arkansas is you just go to your family reunions to pick up chicks. But anyway, all right, I apologize to all my Arkansas friends. Okay. My parents live in Arkansas, by the way. Here I am making fun of Arkansas. But anyway. All right, so no money shall be drawn from the treasury. All right, so now already you're getting nervous, right? No money shall be drawn from the treasury, but in consequence of appropriations made by law. Consequence of appropriations made by law. What that means is there's a process. If money's going to come out of the treasury and it's going to be spent on something, there is a legal process. The consequences of appropriations made by law means it must go through, this is Article 1, remember, legislature, a legislative process. It is a part of a proposal by one house that is approved by the other house and then signed by the president. By the president.
So, Doug,
the same process a law goes through, and often it is a part of a law. It's a piece of legislation.
How does the Biden administration manage to give $1 billion to Ukraine just on a whim?
Well, here's what they do. Here's the problem with a lot of this. Knowing that there are restrictions and checks and balances, and it's, the Constitution just gets in the way, what they'll do often is they will pass budget items that are general. Well, this is for national defense. And they can spend it any way they want as long as they can call it national defense. Even Mr. Trump played that game, remember, for the fence. Oh, it's national defense, so I'm going to grab the money from that since they won't give it to me. In short, there's slush funds all over the place. Yeah, Stephanie says Sloth is the name of that character. One ear up, one ear down. I have my little brown dog, same thing. One ear up, one ear down. Unless I'm talking to him and he's very interested in what I'm saying, then the down ear will go up. It's really weird.
Yeah, my dog always does the same thing. He's got a floppy ear. It's cute. Just nice little signature.
Yeah. And my brown dog actually does communicate with me. I just have to ask the right questions. But anyway, all right. So it has to go through this process. But see, the problem is they know that Congress can write the rules, determine the rules when it comes to the manners and procedures of their operations. Now, one of the students in my class says there needs to be a 28th Amendment regarding that. You know Howard Brady.
Mm-hmm. I do.
Howard says, well, because we just got through the 27th Amendment. 27th Amendment, Congress can count or vote on compensation, but it doesn't go into effect until the next Congress. So in other words, they're not voting themselves a raise, they're voting the next Congress a raise. And if they're on the next Congress, and then they get a raise. He says, well, it should be the same way when it comes to rule changes. If Congress wants to change the manners and procedures of that particular house, then past amendment says they can do that, but from now on, it doesn't take effect till the next Congress. So gosh, if Democrats want to do something, they want to swing something their way to make it easier for them, it doesn't happen till the next Congress. And if the Republicans take the House, they get the rule, and vice versa. I think that's brilliant. It's almost as smart as the Brady Amendment.
No, it's interesting. When who was the Nevada senator who messed with the filibuster, and it's come back to bite them so badly.
About Harry Reid?
Thank you. Yeah, the Reid, all the Reid stuff that Harry Reid did. Is parliamentarian. Is a parliamentarianist, whatever the word is. Can I buy Val? No, it was that the Dems have been furious. I mean, that was one of the worst strategic ploys for the Dems of all time. That's how Trump got his judges.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so anyway, getting back to our point here. So the money from the Treasury is supposed to go through this process. It's in the Constitution. So getting back to my friend saying the 20th Amendment, it's we can alter the processes. Yeah, but Doug, Congress will never alter those processes with an amendment. Well, gosh, I wish there was a way the states could do it without Congress being involved in the. Brady, have you ever heard of something like that?
Yeah, I think we're going to be studying that, about 4 more articles.
Convention of States, Article 5 Convention. All right. Now, then it says something that's very interesting. And a regular statement and account of the receipts and expenditures of all public money. It's a funny word there, all. I know it's shocking. It means all. All public money shall be published from time to time. We are supposed to have a transparency, a transactional record of all expenditures. Now, so Doug, what if something is secret? Well, then it can say something like it's on something secret. But we're supposed to have an expenditure list, transaction, like at your bank. You get a statement, right? All we want is a statement. They don't even know where their money's going, much less any transaction record. How many times have we heard, well, they lost $16 billion or something like that? We should have a transaction record not only of every expenditure, but in my opinion, all the money that's earmarked and how it's earmarked also.
Well, we need to get rid of earmarks altogether. That's the big amendment.
Well, I'm not talking about earmarks on laws. I know what you mean, but I'm talking about how money is earmarked in the sense of where it's to be spent. But I know what you mean. You're right. Earmarks should be gone too. I was just using that word for a different thing. But yeah, we should have full transparency.
Yeah, we cannot even get an audit of the Federal Reserve at 110 years now.
Well, it's funny because Ron Paul used to say, audit the Fed. My response is, don't audit the Fed. Get rid of the Fed.
Yeah, that's one of Alan Meyer's favorite sayings.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons why he and I get along so well. All right. Next one is very interesting, and it's going to open up a very interesting conversation. No title of nobility shall be granted by the United States. Do we have nobility in this country, Ron?
Nobility?
Yeah.
I
Feels like it, right?
Yeah, I think we, you know what? I mean, okay, so we're not supposed to, but there's definitely nobility in this country, even though it's unspoken.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now they're actually speaking it. That's why the laws don't apply to if you have a D next to your name, as opposed to if you have an R next to the name. They make up laws to go after you.
This became a big deal in the 1820s and 1830s. So much so that a political party called the Whig Party emerged in the United States. The word Whig comes from the Whigs in Britain who stood against royalty, stood against the king, stood against the monarchy. And so when Andrew Jackson took the presidency and he believed that the executive should be the strongest part of government, and he pretty much destroyed the Jeffersonian Republicans, and the party reemerged as the Democratic Party. Those who disagreed with him said he acted like a monarch. The joke was King Andrew. And so what better way to stop King Andrew than with a party named after the Whigs, which is the party that was in Britain, the party against the monarchy. So that's where the Whigs originally came from. It was an anti-Andrew Jackson party. So when I get to this, we're not supposed to have royalty, but sometimes we feel like it attitude. This is nothing new. We're 60 years into the Constitution, or 50 years in the Constitution, and the Whigs appear to fight against, quote unquote, King Andrew. And so, hey, Kikio, good to see you, sir. All right, so this no title of nobility shall be granted, though, that also ties into what Jefferson wrote. I mentioned this earlier, Declaration of Independence. All men are created equal, meaning we're all able to sit at the table, not just the elite, not just those with the right lineage, not just those that somehow were granted some type of nobility. We're all capable of someday sitting at the table with everybody else. This is one of the things that kind of ticked the elite off about Christianity, because the monarchs and the nobles and the families that controlled everything, and they were the only ones that could sit at the table. And then Christianity came along, and these priests and high-ranking Christian officers began to emerge, and they would sit at the same table with the elites, but they originally came from the peasantry. And it wasn't a welcome thing at first to allow someone who came from the peasantry to rise up and have the authority to sit at the table with all of the other nobility and elites. And Jefferson and the early Americans said, no, that's not right. All men are created equal. There's going to be no nobility. Everyone has that opportunity. We are the land of opportunity. And so therefore, everyone has the capability someday, however they run their life, whatever they do, to sit at the table. So no title of nobility shall be granted by the United States, and no person holding any office or profit or trust under them, in other words, any political office holder, shall, without the consent of the Congress, accept of any present, emolument, office, or title of any kind, whatever, from any king, prince, or foreign state. This is a guard against foreign influence. This is a guard against what the Tories represented, partly, but more. But this is only against the office holders. This is only against people who hold office and were saying, hey, if they receive this foreign influence and Congress didn't vote on it and say it was okay, they can't hold office. You're done as an office holder.
So For example, those SAR, suspicious activity reports, apparently hundreds of them that Congress has a hold of now, shown from the Biden bank accounts, he should not be eligible for office.
Absolutely. In fact, if something else was in play, they wouldn't even be citizens anymore. What are you talking about, Doug? What do you mean they wouldn't be citizens anymore? Oh, glad you asked. We have such a quick audience.
Only if.
Did something go?
I'll tell you what.
Did something go missing?
Something went missing. Now, I have a copy of some pages from a book that has it. And for those of you who are not familiar, I'm going to go over this. I'm not going to spend the whole show because this could become a deep conversation if I let it. But bear with me here. How bad do you think it is today? Do you think that the political class is conniving and deviant and deceptive enough to, I don't know, make parts of the Constitution just vanish?
No.
Nah, come on. The Americans would never let a key piece of the Constitution just vanish. Why? We've got all this technology. Well, what if they didn't have the technology? Could they pull it off then? So here's the story real quick. Oh, Darren, you're quick. You're quick. One of the few times where I can say brother or your brothers on this. The missing 13th Amendment. We didn't even know about it until 1983. That's how good they buried it and got rid of it, and no one knew. In fact, if it had not have been for a bunch of historians searching through a state house in Maine, to this day we may still not know about it, and we might not be having this conversation. But in 1983, there was a bunch of historians, and they were at a Maine state house. And they're going through some old paperwork and stuff, and they find some old books. And these various books were published in the 1820s. And it says in the books that in addition to what the books are about, that there's also a prefix to the Constitution of the United States in those books. And so they open up the books and they find the Constitution, and oh, look, Constitution, this book was published in the 1800s, and here's the Constitution, and look, there's 13. Wait a second. If this book was published in the 1820s, how is it that there's 13 amendments listed here? According to my history book, there was only 12 amendments in the 1820s. 13th Amendment didn't occur until 1865, which outlawed slavery in the United States. Over a war all about slavery. It wasn't about anything else, right? Oh, wait. Never mind. Just like the Revolutionary War was only about taxes and tax without representation, right? No, that's wrong too. You've been fed so much garbage, but anyway, I digress. So they see these 13 amendments and say, "Well, what is this?" They look at other books and they're finding more. So they take a couple of those books. And they begin doing more research. They find more of these books at different state houses around the country. So they go to federal records, the Library of Congress, things like that. And they can find no trace of this particular 13th Amendment ever existing. They do a little bit more of a deep dive search. And they're finding more evidence that the 13th Amendment did, but state records and federal records don't show it, but old books and pamphlets do. And then they find an interesting one, a pamphlet from 1819, published by the state of Virginia, which basically says, hey, we previously ratified this 13th Amendment, and we just want to put out the paperwork showing that we're recognizing we were the final ratification vote. Why would they feel the need to do that? Because, see, the Library of Congress in 1814 had been torched along with the White House. So the records for this had been burned up. So Virginia's saying, hey, we don't want to lose this 13th Amendment. It's too important. So we'll put out a pamphlet reminding everybody we were the final ratification vote. And I know Brady and I differ on this, but I've done some deep dive on this. The final ratification vote happened in 1811. 1819 was just a reminder of that occurrence. Now, that said, what is this amendment? Why does it matter? And come on, Doug, really? Conspiracy theory. Do you have proof? Well, I don't have the book, but I do have a copy of 2 of the pages from one of those books that I've seen held in my hand. And holding something in my hand doesn't make it a conspiracy theory. So the book I have, and I took pictures of my phone, and I don't know if anybody's gonna be able to see it, but this is the cover page. I kind of saw it. And here's what it says: Military Laws of the United States, to which is prefixed the Constitution of the United States, compiled and published under the authority of the War Department. Remember, it wasn't the Department of Defense back then. By Truman Cross, Washington, Edward de Craft, printer, 1825. That's the title page. Then on page 16, the 13th Amendment appears. Again, I took a picture of that page. You're not going to be able to see it real well, but there it is. And let me read that amendment to you, and then we'll explain exactly what it means. How come this is not turning for me? It's not my phone's not cooperating with me for some reason here. So 13th Amendment. If any citizen of the United States shall accept, claim, receive, or retain any title or of nobility or honor, or shall, without the consent of Congress, accept and retain any present, pension, office, or emolument of any kind whatever from any emperor, king, prince, or foreign power, such person shall cease to be a citizen of the United States, and shall be incapable of holding any office of trust or profit under them, or either of them. So in other words, Article 1, Section 9, last clause for citizens, for the people. And the penalty is not being able to hold office. The penalty is the loss of citizenship. And did you notice how accurate the site is on your screen? Because I was reading from my book. I didn't even look at what's on the screen, and it read word for word, right? Because this is out there. Oh, but dog, it's conspiracy theory. I've held the book in my hand, printed in 1825. Now, let's talk about what this means. What it means is we don't want foreign influence of any kind. If you hold a title, and also remember, all men are created equal. No privilege, no title of honor, no nobility, nothing. We don't want foreign influence. We don't want anything that goes against this idea that all men are created equal. No special privilege class, so on and so forth. So if that's the case, what does that mean? Well, not only does it stop foreign influence, but it also stops members of our society from colluding with foreign powers, foreign organizations. I don't know, maybe something like an International Bar Association. Because, see, through banking, Europe had done what it could to try to control us and control our situation through money. That was the Bank of the United States. Good old Alexander Hamilton. Bank of the United States charter lasted for 20 years, 1791 to 1811. Interestingly enough, this 13th Amendment was ratified, according to my records, in, 1811, the same year that the Bank of the United States charter expired. So there's an attempt here to do two things: get the rest of the world out of our business in banking and in our legal system. So they pass this amendment. Now, what fascinates me, you can call it a coincidence if you want. I'm not going to go into any theory here. This is just timing. You've got the expiration of the charter of the Bank of the United States. You've got the ratification of the missing 13th Amendment. And then in less than a year, in fact, in a matter of months, we're suddenly at war. The War of 1812 with a European power. The one that's kind of controlling a lot of the banking and legal aspects of what's going on in Europe. That's a weird coinkydink. Think there's anything to it, Brady?
All wars are banker wars.
Now, there was an individual, I hear, and I've always thought that this was never confirmed with evidence. You say it has been, who had this interesting last name. Some of you may know who this last name refers to, Rothschild, who made a comment about the end of the Bank of the United States and the ratification, and I think ratification of the 13th Amendment, although he doesn't say so in his statement. But I think that might have been also heavy on his heart. What did he say? Do you by any chance have that in front of you or available? I know I didn't warn you, but
I'm looking for it exactly right now, but I will find it.
All right. Well, I don't remember the first name. I think it starts with an N. Was it Nathan or
Nathan Meyer Rothschild? Nathan Meyer Rothschild.
Nathan Meyer Rothschild, who said,
if the United States does not renew the charter for the First Bank of the United States, I predicted there would be war.
She will be at war. War of 1812 started right after the expiration of that charter and the ratification of the missing 13th Amendment. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I didn't say there's no such thing as conspiracies. Oh, there are conspiracies abound. But I'm one of those who needs some real hardcore evidence on stuff. Missing 13th Amendment, I've got hardcore evidence. Now, here's what's interesting about it, to tell you the rest of the story. Somewhere during the war between the states, it vanished from all records. How is it that the average American, surely there were other Doug Gibbs kind of guys back then that were paying attention to stuff, surely somebody noticed this just vanished. And it vanished so thoroughly that we had no clue until 1983 when these historians stumbled upon it in some old books. And here's now the interesting part of that story. When they went back to the main house, the books that they had left behind that they decided they wanted to retrieve were gone. The conspiracy continues. Do you realize what would happen if we suddenly got this 13th Amendment back in play? How many people would lose their office and lose their citizenship if suddenly this 13th Amendment was in play again? And let me rephrase that. How many of the people that we consider to be the bad people, the they out there, would be gone? That are guilty of violating this?
Found it. Here's the quote. Either the application for the renewal of the charter is granted, or the United States will find itself involved in a most disastrous war. He then instructed the British to teach those impudent Americans a lesson, bring them back to colonial status.
I've often called the War of 1812 the Second American Revolution. All that does is confirm what I've already felt about the war.
No territory was won or lost at the end of the day, but the United States had accumulated so much debt that we then, at the end of the war, had to do a charter for the Second Bank of the United States just to pay off the war debt.
What was the third?
Was the third what?
Revolution.
Hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, it did.
Are you going to say 1861?
Yep.
It wasn't a revolution. It's the opposite of a revolution.
No, it wasn't.
All right, go ahead and make your case.
Okay. It was not a civil war, if that's what you're saying.
No.
It was a foreign invasion, but that's different than a revolution.
No, it was a revolution from this. It was a revolution then from the people in the South who were fighting for self-determination.
They'd already left, so they weren't revolting. Semantical differences. We don't.
It was a war between two countries,
which is different than a revolution in my mind. Yeah, going back.
Well, it certainly wasn't a civil war, because a civil war is two entities fighting for control of one thing.
No, our first civil war was actually the American Revolution, because if you look at it, the Tories were countrymen that were fighting against the revolutionaries. So in a sense, it really was a civil war. That was the first civil war. The second one is on the horizon, I think, possibly.
I don't think so.
The one point of the missing 13th Amendment that I always like to emphasize is the phrase, any title of nobility or honor. And the word honor meant something a little bit different then. And what they were talking about is privileges that one type of people would have that others don't. Now, we do have people with honors under that definition today. You've got people that hold public office can't be prosecuted. You've got people in the legal profession call themselves your honor. But there's many examples of this, and it's a bit of an issue because there are people that are above the law in the current America. And if missing 13th Amendment gets put back in place, we ought to be having a long conversation about those things.
Absolutely. So there you go on all of that stuff. Anything else that people want to ask or you guys want to insert? Fascinating stuff. If I was in my Constitution class, I'd ask for a raise of hands. How many of you knew of the 13th Amendment before you heard it from me? There's almost never hands that go up. This is something people don't know about. Now, I know my audience is, quite knowledgeable, so I'm sure there's a bunch of them that have. But most people in my classes, almost all of them, until they heard me talk about it, they'd never heard of it. All right. Not that I'm tooting a horn or anything. I don't have a horn to toot, but it is a fascinating piece of history that very few people know about. All right, Article 1, Section 10. Let's go ahead and launch into it. I doubt we'll finish it, but let's at least launch into it. Get it started, and then we'll decide what to do after that. No state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation. Stop right there. Why is that there? Well, we're in a union here. While the states are sovereign and autonomous, they are on there to take care of their own business. They're also part of a union, and this union under the Constitution was designed to be firmer than the one under the Articles of Confederation. Now, we have historians who'll tell me that there's one or two possibilities. Either it's a voluntary union or it's a firm union, that there can't be an in-between. And I say, well, it is. It's a voluntary union, but it is firmer. The idea is we want to make it so that they're not leaving, that they're not just running off to secede easily. And we don't believe they should, according to the writers of the Constitution. They don't think the states should secede, but they can, because it's still a voluntary union. But we're going to make sure it's firmer. And because it's a firmer union, and because this is a part of promoting, protecting, and preserving the union, we're going to put in here a clause that disallows them for making treaties, alliances, or confederations to team up against other states. Because we want to preserve this union the best we can. So, no state shall, without the consent of the Congress, I'm already a whole paragraph later. No state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation. Now, when the war between the states started and the southern states had seceded and formed the Confederate States of America, one of the excuses that Abraham Lincoln and the Republicans used for invading the southern states was that they had illegally seceded, and they had illegally, in violation of this, formed a confederation. They didn't illegally form a confederation. They were no longer under the contract. When you secede as a state, that means you're saying you're no longer a part of the country. So, well, the rest of the country didn't say they could do that. That's like saying the woman says, I'm filing for divorce. The man says, we can't do that. All right, sorry, can't do that. He said so. No. If she wants out of the marriage, she doesn't need his okay. I'm out of here. I'm tired of being abused. And then the northern states, through military occupation, says, no, you're not leaving. Beat their wife up, threw her in the basement, put a lock on it. That's what the northern states did to the South, if you want to use the marriage divorce ideas here, allegory. The southern states said, we're gone. That meant they're no longer a part of the marriage contract. Constitution. They were outside the contract. Therefore, this clause about forming a confederation no longer applied. They were now foreign countries. And as foreign countries that had left the Union, they formed a confederation. And the Constitution has no bearing on foreign countries. Ron, you feeling pretty good about what I just said?
Yeah.
Pretty accurate, do you think?
I'd say so.
You like the marriage divorce analogy?
I like that. Yes.
Yeah. The first time I used it,
I like to use the people who are. I'll tell you later. We're running short on time.
The North was in breach anyway. Yeah, the North was breaching the contract. I hope that's what you mean, Darren. Absolutely.
Yeah, and to talk about the whether the constitutionality of secession, well, it was northern states that started those conversations literally 10 years after ratification. And they had many such efforts, some of the northern states, to join Canada. You know, they had loyalists up there, and they didn't like the southern states, like Virginia, were really dominating the early days of the Constitution. You had Jefferson, Madison as back-to-back presidents. You know, that's quite a bit of domination, and the northern states didn't like it. So the legality was debated. I mean, it was not in debate, but it was established. It was accepted as fact. The other question was whether it was a good idea, and that's why it never happened. But they knew from day one that secession was allowed. It was
Darren, earlier when I said about the war about slavery, I was being sarcastic. He says, well, no, it was all about trade. It wasn't all about trade, but that was a huge component for sure. Yes.
Yeah, it's not just trade, but taxation. So with
trade, taxation, the breach of the contract,
at the time,
legal problems.
In 1861, basically the North was trying to get a lot of government spending so they could build internal improvements. In this case, it was railroads and industrialization in the North. Mm-hmm. Well, 3/4 of the tax base in the country came from the South because they were the big producers. Mm-hmm. If the South secedes, the North doesn't have the tax money to do all their internal improvements.
Well, not only that, but also now manufacturing dies. They've got no goods coming in.
That's right.
And so England had industrialized 50 years before the rest of the world because due to their banking system, they were able to capitalize these big projects. This is what the mercantilists of the North wanted to do. And they were willing to basically kill their fellow Americans to do so. Once again, all wars are banker wars. But it was a war about tax. They lost their tax base. The Republican Party would have been wiped out in 1864 in the elections. Because Lincoln had caused them, their economy was going to go into a tailspin. So that was the North's main. I mean, to me, that's the number one cause. Was it was all about money for them.
Darren and Tracy in the chat had a conversation about how they've been learning things. Darren says, and I this is the part I like. This class has given me things to research personally that I might not have researched before. That's huge. That's my point. I want you to research. I want you to look into things. I want you to know more. I want you to be eager to know the truth. And don't just believe it because I said it. Or because the hamster or the pirate that's below me on this screen said it. But because you want to know the truth. Don't believe us. Look it up. And that's like I tell people, if I'm wrong, I need to know. So I have no problem with you saying, Doug, I looked up something you said and you are way off. Well, then let's talk about it. I need to know. But Darren, I appreciate the compliment. I'm glad you're out there researching stuff you might not have researched otherwise. That's the point. The other point is this. I've got a woman in my Fallbrook class, and she showed me an article that she wrote for a local newspaper. She would have never written articles. She would have never written letters to the editor. Now she is. And I read it, and it was on a constitutional topic regarding citizenship. I told her I couldn't have written it better myself. And she took it as a big compliment. I said, no, you understand me here. The purpose of my classes, Tracy, the purpose of this is to clone myself. I want more Dougs out there talking about this stuff, making people aware. And then once we all know, we say, okay, now how are we going to fix it? Now we know how this engine runs. Which wrenches are we going to turn? Which belts need to be replaced? Which hoses need to be replaced? Now that we know how it's supposed to operate, I want you to be constitutional mechanics. The good news is you're becoming that. The good news is you're having meetings regarding that. But guess what? The car don't fix itself if you just have meetings. Eventually, we got to go out there and start turning wrenches. But
yes. But to what?
I'm watching this chat room, and they're having fun with the jokes and all this sort of stuff. And Warhamster's just egging them on, too. But anyway. But I want you guys to actually, absolutely, we should have a Mr. Constitution in every county in America. We should have localism on the rise, because you know what? And Brady has said this a number of times, and I've kind of adopted it for myself too. Washington's not going to fix itself. And we're not going to fix it in Washington. We're going to fix it on Main Street America. We're going to fix it in our school board meetings and our city council meetings and in our states. And once we get control of that stuff, then the big boys are running scared, because suddenly they see a threat that they didn't expect to happen from the bottom up. That's how it's supposed to work. That's the purpose of all this. Let's learn how the vehicle runs so we can fix it. And let's fix it from the ground up. Let's make them nervous. But it's a process. It's not going to happen fast. We're not going to suddenly do this wonderful thing or have somebody ride in on a white horse. We're going to go through a process here, and it's going to get ugly and it's going to get good. So that's my little rant there.
Why do you think that we are headed for CW2?
Doesn't have to be armed. I think we might even be in the middle of it.
Yeah, I could buy that argument very easily.
Well, because I don't think we are nearly as divided as people say. I think I think the people that are in opposition to our way of thinking are vastly smaller numbers.
To have a CW, you don't have to be evenly divided. You could have 6% out of their mind, and it could create a CW.
But I get that, but what I'm saying is I don't think that I don't think that we're nearly as divided as everybody says. I think there are elements out there who want to make us believe that we are more divided than we truly are.
Well, I think what's going on here is I think it's a class warfare. It's class war. It's not red versus blue so much. It is class warfare, and they try to keep us divided so we don't notice it. But it's our government is what is oppressing us, and they're doing that on behalf of these elite ruling class of people, and they have declared war on us. They've taken away our rights.
The CW is Hegelian dialectic.
Yeah, but that's what's going on. It's our government against the people. Mm-hmm. And it's grown way beyond where it was ever supposed to be, and it needs to be shrunk down to size. And it's fighting very hard not to let that happen. Mm-hmm. That's the Praetorian Guard protecting their emperor. The
CW exists, but the thing is, it's by design. And we are in the middle of it. But at the same time, I don't necessarily think it has to be necessarily a kinetic conflict. Some of it will be, some of it has been. You know, and one of the things I like to talk about in my class is, in my opinion, it's not as much class warfare as it is this war between collectivism and individualism. The class warfare is being used as battlefields over the larger war.
Well,
but it's really collectivism versus individualism. And that's why my last book, Repeal Democracy, was really about that. Is, you know, they're hitting us with a collective argument. And the problem is, many of our allies are falling for it.
And they sent their shock troops loose in the cities over the last few weeks. And that's all intimidation tactics.
And then we've got, I remember, I talk about this in my classes sometimes. One time I was watching the peaceful demonstration in Ferguson, Missouri, as everything was on fire and people are dying, and this kid comes running up to this camera, and I think it was a stationary camera on it, but he comes running up to this camera as flames are going in the background, and we've seen the carnage, and he says, "This is what democracy looks like." And I'm like,
Are you familiar?
That's it.
Are you familiar with a gentleman named Chaziel Sons?
No.
It's Chaziel Sunz. Go look him up on YouTube, and look at the video where he identifies the he was a part of Black Lives Matter, and he comes out and he actually says that the movement was hijacked, and that they are literally trying to have the Black community be their foot soldiers and cannon fodder for the upcoming things that they want to do.
Right. Well, and that's not a surprise. I get that. How do you spell the first name?
Chaziel and then Sunz. If you look it up on YouTube.
Okay.
And you'll know it because, and here, actually, let me do this.
Well, I put a note down, but do it for the chat for sure.
Well, no, I'll share the screen so that people can see which one they want to look for. Let's see here.
Darren, I'm a firm believer the money's not the problem. It's those who love money more than everything else in the world, including God.
Money is not the root of all evil. It's the love of money that is the root of all evil.
Darren's calling for you, by the way, to put it in the chat too.
Okay, so this is the there is the link, and if you look at this, is Chaziel Sons, ex-BLM organizer, exposes Democrats, Antifa, BLM, and more. It's 23 minutes long, and I would highly recommend everybody watch this and share it with your friends of color. And this was done, I don't know when this was uploaded, but this particular one was done 2 years ago. But if you go back and you look, I think this was, that's not it. Actually, let me do this. Because if you go and you look at like his initial one, these are 2 years ago. 2 years ago. It was more than that. This was done. I want to say it was done probably about like 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
So he's basically a Black community version of walk away movement.
No, I remember when this came out in real time, and I think you're right, about 5 or 6 years ago, Ron. But we were talking about at the time that Obama was stoking a race war intentionally. He did that with the with that what was it, the professor? I mean, just time after time, and they were absolutely doing that. And basically, these are the shock troops. They've got 15 years of this CRT indoctrination, and they've got they've lit the spark.
Yeah.
Yep. All by design. All right, I gotta get to Capistrano, so I'm gonna get going. United we stand, combined we kick butt. God bless America, and God bless you. I just put out a couple videos today. One last night, one today. For some reason, Rumble's not picking them up, and one of the videos I did not put on a particular channel on purpose because I knew it'd be gone, but it's on my other ones: BitChute, Brighteon, and Rumble. Rumble for some reason is not playing nice. So if you go to bitchute.com/Douglas V. Gibbs, you'll find my last two videos there. The one of them is also on this network. The other one is only on BitChute, Rumble, and Brighteon. Once again, Rumble's kind of playing weird today. Last couple.
Well,
days.
I think Rumble's experiencing some growing pains, and you got to realize that Rumble is the next. Rumble's probably has the biggest target on its.
Oh sure, yeah, no doubt.
Because it is the video platform that everybody's going to.
Yeah, and so my videos will eventually be on Rumble. I've got them set to be on there. And I get that. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that.
No, I didn't take it that way.
Right now, if you want to see those videos, go to bitchute.com/Douglas V. Gibbs or brighteon.com/channels/Douglas V. Gibbs. I've got my latest videos there, and then I've got one of my latest videos, not the other one, at youtube.com/Douglas V. Gibbs. Then I'm going to take my other YouTube channel and I'm going to connect constitutioneducation.net to it and start also going through the Constitution, but in a different way I do here. I'm not going to go line by line. I'm going to go word by word. There is a difference.
Well, I think that we should do that next. I still want to do an episode, Doug, and whether it's here or it's done on my Untold History channel, I want to do a show where we talk about how the Constitution is not a racial document. It is actually very anti-slavery.
Well, we would have to then invite one of my very good friends to that one, named Frederick Douglass.
Yeah, let's do that. I'm very well aware of who Frederick Douglass is, and I sensed the humor and I was saying, yes, let's do that.
Oh, thanks, no, I understood. I was just grinning. I knew you knew.
Well, yeah.
Thanks, everybody. See you next week.
I mean, you can't see, but you can think.
Oh, I can still see. I can only see. I just don't only able to see. See, I can actually I can see out of this eye, but it's like trying to look through bathroom glass. All I can see is I can see light, but I can't see. I can't see anything of. There's nothing clear. It's like looking through. It would be like looking through like fog, basically.
Well, see, and then you can also play games with this when it comes to significant others or whatever. So my wife, she gets upset at me because she thinks I have selective hearing. Well, I'm deaf in my left ear, so I tell her, I don't always hear what you have to say. In fact, because I'm deaf in my left ear, I only hear half of what you say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it doesn't work on her either.
No.
All right, guys. Let's get out of here.
All right,
have a good night, guys. Thanks,
good
everybody.
to see you. We'll see you next week.
Yes, ma'am, sir.
What?